Welcome back to Behind the Play. My name is Alex Adams, and today I'm very excited to introduce Jamie McLennan, or Noodles, onto the show. He is a former NHL goalie who played for 11 seasons. He now works at TSN as an analyst and color commentator and co-host of Overdrive on TSN 1050. Thanks so much for coming on, Jamie. How's it going?
Not too bad. How are you doing today?
Great, great. I just want to first ask you a little bit about your playing career. Was it always your dream as a kid to make the NHL, and when did you feel it was attainable?
I think, playing road hockey when you're a kid, you're like, yeah, would love to be a hockey player, all of that fun stuff. So that's cool. Um, I think when I was in like junior pro, was playing in the Western Hockey League, you're kind of 17, 18. You aspire to be a pro hockey player, but you're not sure how realistic it is. Um, I was always one of the better ones for my age group in my area, like in Alberta where I grew up and stuff like that. So you're like, okay, you're kind of at that level. You make junior hockey, and then you keep challenging yourself and seeing if you can kind of get to the next level. So I don't really know when it kind of became, turned from a dream into, hey, this could be possible type of thing. You get drafted and you think, okay, like you've got a chance, but you don't even realize when you get drafted, like that's the beginning of like the work. Like it's not the end result. So, there's I think a book out there, I think it's called Many Are, Drafted, Few Make It type of thing. It's my former goaltender. I think Rick Hines wrote it. It was a really interesting book I read years ago, just saying like many are called, but few are answered type of thing. And it's true. How many people get drafted and actually never see an NHL game? So I think it became a reality for me once you got to training camps and realized, okay, like this is some of your peers and I think I can do this. But I'll be honest, throughout my whole career, you're always being chased, especially given, where I settled as a backup. You find your ceiling at the NHL level, and then you try and maximize it. And my ceiling was, I thought I was a really good backup. So, okay, let's maximize that. And then let's see how long this lasts. And, the career, you say 11 years, lost a couple to lockout and all that fun stuff. And then, had some years in the minors and that. So 17-year career, and, you're proud of it, but you also realize what you are and where you were. So, long answer to a short question. I think in junior, you're kind of like, maybe there's a chance, but I wasn't a surefire NHLer. I was very highly rated when I got drafted, stuff like that. But again, nothing's for sure. So I was very lucky, timing, having the people to work with and all that stuff. So, I think it became a reality really like when I was 19, 20.
Okay. And what were some of your most memorable moments of your career? I want to just mention one thing for the listeners. I know you confronted a Puffin once in
Yes.
Sens, in the AHL. So maybe if you could talk about that and any other kind of cool memories of your career.
Okay, I'll tell that story because it is quite memorable. And the guy's name was Buddy the Puff, and it ended up at St. John's, the Rock, where the Leafs farm team was. And the reason why it's so fresh in my mind too, apparently the guy who played Buddy the Puff and like in the suit for years just passed away. So a lot of people from out there like sent me messages going like, this guy has loved you telling the story for years. And I don't even know if it was him or if it was his predecessor, but like, it was kind of funny. It became like a little bit of a folk story out there or whatever. And, so getting drafted, I was drafted to the New York Islanders, and, at that time, just legendary organization. They've won cups in the 80s. You've got Bill Torrey, the general manager, Al Arbor, legendary coach. So I go to training camp, and the goalie coach is Billy Smith, the legendary Billy Smith, who is known for aggressiveness, no nonsense attitude. So I get sent to the minors, and it's really like my first experience with Smitty as far as I went through training camp with them. You're developing a relationship, but you're always trying to impress your coach. So I get down there and I joined the team. I had been sent to the East Coast League. I got called up to the NHL because there was an injury. And then I went from the NHL and joined the AHL team. So I was on the move quite a bit. and I joined the team in St. John's. And I'll never forget this. When you go out there, you play a couple games. So it's a Tuesday, Thursday type of situation because you're on the rock. You got to fly into it. And you got to, play some games and fly out. So Butch Goring was the coach. I get in there and he's like, you're playing Tuesday, no problem. So I get out there and as you come out for warm up, you come out for the start of the game, the mascot's on the ice and it's this like weird looking bird. Apparently now I know it's the Puffin. I had no idea what it was. It looked like kind of Toucan Sam. And this mascot was in my crease and kind of giving me like a hex. And I was like, all right, beat it. Like I'm just a kid. I'm 19, 20 years old. I'm just trying to impress my coach. I want to play as good as I can play. So first period goes really well. I play really well and things are settled in. And after the first period, I skate off and coming out for the second, that bird is in my crease again. And I'm like, what is going on? And he's like, now you got to skate the whole length. And he's like standing there hexing. The crowd's kind of in it. So he gives me a push and I like kind of push him back out of the way. All I'm doing is scraping my crease and just trying to pay attention to like the game, which is the most important, not mascot. So I ended up having, like, long story short, I ended up having an amazing game. Like I think I stopped like 35 for 36 or something. I got first star and I was so excited because we win the game. I go out and, you go out for star or whatever, you skate off. And as I'm skating off, I go into the dressing room and the guys are like, great job, Noodles or whatever. And Billy Smith is sitting in my stall and he's like, he's like annoyed. Like he's kind of looking at me and he goes, I need to talk to you outside. And I was like, okay, like maybe he's going to take me outside in private and be like, hey, I'm really proud of you. You played awesome. And there's a little bit of swearing here. Can I do it? Can I swear or okay? Yeah. I'm not sure sometimes because I'm more cleaned for TV and radio and stuff. Okay. So anyway, so Smitty takes me out in the hallway and he's kind of reading me the riot act. He's like, what the hell was that? And I was like, what do you mean? I got first star. And he's like, that bird. He's like, why is that effing bird in your crease? And like, he goes, if he's there on Thursday, you fucking run him over. And I was like, what? Like, I was so taken back by it because he didn't care that I got first star. He was like, don't you ever let anybody mess with your net and your crease and with you. And I was like, okay, so I went back in the room and I swear I was almost crying. Like I was like, here, it should have been like such a great experience. And he was like, don't ever let that bird, mess with you. So I'm thinking, okay, God, like I don't sleep that night. I'm like rattled. And we practice the next day and then we play Thursday. It's 2 days later. And I'm praying like, I hope I don't start. Like, I don't want them to start me. I'm like, maybe they could start, Danny Lorenz, who was my goalie partner. And sure enough, I'm skating around on Wednesday and Butch goes, you're playing tomorrow. And I'm like, oh my God, like I can't, I'm rattled. I'm thinking, what am I going to do if this bird is there? And I'm thinking, okay, maybe the bird's not going to be there. All I'm focused on is this stupid bird. And so sure enough, I skate out to start the game and the bird is there. So I allow like 3 goals in the first period. I should have got pulled. I was terrible. Like I wasn't very sharp that night. And I should have got pulled, but I swear, like I can't verify this. I've never talked to Smitty about it, but I feel like he told Butch, like, keep him in there and let's see how this guy battles through. So as the second period starts, there's the bird standing in my crease 200 feet away as I get out there. And I say, to hell with this. I'm just going to bury this guy. So I skate as hard as I can down 200 feet and the bird's in my crease and I just run him over and I knock him flying into the corner. And the crowd goes nuts. They start screaming at me like the birds, like the head. I felt like the head was on sideways. Like, here's the thing that when I look back with some perspective, I have no idea who was in there in that mascot uniform. It could have been a 14-year-old girl. It could have been a 75-year-old man, a senior citizen. Who knows? And I just like attacked this person. And we end up losing like 7-1, like something ridiculous. Like I was so bad. And after the game, I come walking off and I'm like, oh my God, he's going to read me the riot act. I was so terrible. And he's sitting in my stall and he's got a smile on his face. And I'm like, and he goes, let's go outside again. We go outside in the hallway and he's like, that's how you be a man in this league. And I was like, what? I just gave up a touchdown. He's like, Jamie, this is a process And he goes, this is all about establishing respect. And he goes, you got respect because people know you won't take nonsense. And I was like, oh my God, like that was my first kind of like pro,
Mhm.
away from hockey, non-technical lesson as to like how you establish. Now, again, life has changed. You don't do stuff like that nowadays, but back then, this is, 25, 30 years ago. It was just a different time.
Mhm.
But I'll never forget Buddy the Puffin. And like I say, when he passed, people sent me notes, and I kind of still chuckle about it. And I actually, if you look on Overdrive and look on my backdrop in my home office, there's a little bobblehead of Buddy the Puffin.
Oh,
I
wow.
put it somebody sent it to me, and I keep it there all the time because I think it's such a part of my like fabric, or part of like me growing as a pro athlete and stuff. So it was kind of a funny story.
I just wanted to kind of go to Overdrive and your work, with TSN. Was that something you thought about as your career was ending to work at TSN, and then how did that come about?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I was always I love telling stories. I kind of always been in the background of a lot of like funny things. I always joke that I was like the Forrest Gump of like the NHL. I was always kind of like there for like some weird events. But how it came about is when I retired, I joined the Flames organization, and I was in player development, and I was the goalie coach, and associate coach, all of that fun stuff. And the day my contract didn't get renewed, they offered me to go back into player development. But I got an email from TSN, the head of TSN Hockey, saying, would you like to try the panel? So I had to get it cleared from Calgary because I was still under contract with them. Flew out to Toronto, tried the panel. Obviously, was really raw, didn't know what the hell I was doing, all that fun stuff. But I think they thought that there was some potential there. So I talked to the head of hockey and said, I would like to do this, but I need reps, and I'm willing. At that time, I was recently single. So I said, I'm willing to move to Toronto if you can give me reps. So TSN radio was just starting at the time. So you get lots of reps on radio. I was doing that. They put me on That's Hockey. So they started giving me lots of reps to get more comfortable. So it kind of just worked out that I was going to have a job change anyways, to go either back into player development with the Flames organization, or try this new thing out. And tried it out, ended up liking it. And I guess we're 12 years later, and this is, I think my 12th year with TSN. So.
And I guess just to transition a little bit, like you now do color as well, like as an analyst for games. What do you think makes you such an effective analyst, and what's your kind of process for that?
My process, I feel like I was an analyst when I was a backup goaltender, because I sat there and watched. So I had 880 games in the league, and I played 250. So I watched for 600 games, probably, a decent paid seat, put it that way. So you're always analyzing. I look at it from, yes, a goaltender's perspective, but I try in my, color commentating analysis to go, answer the question, why? Like, why did this happen? Well, it's easy to see the puck went in. Well, why? How did it go in? What was the process? So I think that's kind of what I think about all the time when I'm doing color is, point out something that maybe not be captain obvious. And, you're not just going to have a guy come to center ice and just shoot and it goes in, and you go, the goalie missed it. Where are the errors? Where are the great plays? Where are the things that, play as a play develops to make that happen, good or bad? And I think you pointed out with respect, because it's not about crapping on somebody. It's more about how the process of something happens out there. So I think that's, if people think I'm a good analyst, I think that's what's helped that's my thought process. But it is a work in progress for me. I'm always learning. I'm trying to, absorb new systems. I've dove into analytics. There's all sorts of things that you try to be as an analyst and try and grow too, because the game changes, the world has changed, so you have to grow with it. So I think that's kind of my formula doing color, and I love it. Like, color is one of the things I love. Overdrive, I love all the platforms I'm on, but color is one of the biggest rushes, because it's live, and it's live TV. You got to own it right there. So you see a misspeak, you see something, you got to correct it right away, or it's there's no like premeditation. It's like you go at it and let's let it unfold here. And I try and have as much fun as possible too. That's the thing too, as I don't take myself too seriously. You know, I said this before. I knew what I'm very proud of my career, but I knew what I was as a player. And it's more about, you know, expanding and taking drawing off the experience, drawing off the people I played with, and trying to apply that into, you know, some of my analysis right now.
And you cover the Sens quite a bit as a color analyst, and I just
Yep.
wanted to ask you a little bit about them. They've made a bit of a push recently, and they're still like they had a bad start to the year, and they sit 7 points out of the playoffs. Do you think they could find a way to come back into the playoff hunt or even make the playoffs, or is it too little, too late?
I don't say too little, too late. I would have liked to. I remember talking to DJ about this in Tampa right at the end of this October, early November. And he said their November was so critical because they were playing, you know, teams that were more playoff teams. Their schedule got really tough. You know, the Josh Norris injury was so devastating on so many different levels. Their power play suffered because of it, even though they got a really good power play. They just had to adapt to some of the looks. You know, now all of a sudden you go Timmy Stutzle, hey, you got to be number one as a 20-year-old and get these matchups against, you know, some of the Eastern elites. It's weird because I say this and I tell this to people too. If you actually look at some of their underlying numbers, like they should be a lot better. Like, I mean, a lot better is the wrong word. They should have more points in the standings.
Yeah.
And what drove it home for me was the afternoon game in Anaheim in, like, we'll call it mid to late November. They won 5-1. And I remember thinking to myself, Anaheim's a last place team. And at that point, both those teams were in the last place. Like basically it was Ottawa and Anaheim at the bottom of the league. And I remember saying, Anaheim right now is a last place team and they look like it. And that's where they want to be. The way that they've built their team, the way that they're in a retool, you know, have some pieces that they're going to trade at the deadline, all that. So it reinforced my thought process of like, Ottawa's not a last place team. They deserve better. If they can get some consistent goaltending where, you know, it really hurt them, that Talbot injury too. And Forsberg wasn't as lights out as he was down the stretch. So there was just so many like what ifs. A slow start from Debrincat, slow start from Batherson. You know, they're still trying to figure out the defensive model of how they were going to play. So there was a bunch of what ifs. So to answer your question, I'm going to go back to what I believe from day one. I think they're going to play meaningful hockey down the stretch. I don't think it translates to the playoffs. It might, the damage might be too, like, it might be too, I wouldn't say too little, too late, but the damage might have been done through their start again. But I think they're going to be, they've won 7 of 10 and they look more like the team that we expect, where you've got good goaltending. You've got your top players playing like top players and feeling comfortable. The system seems to be coming in. So I believe they're going to be playing meaningful hockey. I don't know if that translates to 85 to, you know, 87 points, which would make that misses the playoffs probably, but it shows progress for me if you can, you know, build on that. But I come back to it. They're going to be playing some real good games down the stretch here that will be meaningful. And if they can, you know, catch lightning in a bottle and get points in 12 of 14 games. And that's what you really need. You need in today's, like, we were talking about it on Overdrive. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago. It's like the Leafs have gotten points in 15 games. They haven't caught Boston. Like, it's insane. Like, you know, like you go through and you look at some teams that have won 6 in a row. Pittsburgh's won 6 in a row right now. And they're just like, okay, yeah, they're in the playoff picture, but they're being chased by Washington, who's won 5 in a row. And it's like, the league is really upside down right now as far as how crazy the storylines are. But that's a long answer for, I think the Sens are going to play meaningful hockey.
And I guess, you know, you covering the team as well, what player for Ottawa has really stood out for you so far this year?
My love for Jake Sanderson has to temper a little bit because I've had a few tweets to be like, all right, would you knock it off with the Sanderson love? I'm like, I think the kid's special. I really do. So, you know, am I a little bit biased because I grew up with the family? Like, you know, his dad, Jeff, I know that, you know, Jake was born in Montana, but really their family's from St. Albert, Alberta, where I grew up.
Mhm.
And Jeff and I have had a long friendship, and I went to high school with Jake's mom, Ellen. Like I literally know
Wow.
the family. The brothers, which would be his uncles, I know, and Guy and Grant are the names. Like I literally know his family. So I didn't know him as a kid. I just, saw him once in a while around the rink as this little, 4-year-old, 5-year-old type of thing. Now to see him grow right in front of our eyes and go, man, this kid, like I don't want to say he's just scratching the surface, but once he knows the league, he's going to be really special. So I think Stutzle's found another level this year, like his production. Um, I say this respectfully. I think in the last couple of years, there were times where, maybe a collision in the corner, he didn't get up. He was up slow and, would kind of still finding his way. I think he's gotten stronger. I think he's more confident in his body and his ability. It's unfortunate. I thought I read this morning he's out like maybe a week or something. Like it doesn't sound like it was a bad injury, which is good because from the replay, it looked like he hyperextended his elbow, which kind of concerned me. But I think he's a guy that I've always said this. I think he's the most talented forward there, and he's going to find another level. Brady's a beast. He's a guy who drags you into a war every night and play, hey, you want to play a skill game? I can do that. You want to play a mean game? I can do that. You want me to stand up for my teammates? You want me to call things out? So I like, him. Those are the guys that I like circle and go, that's what my highest expectations are. It's nice to see Shabbat playing good hockey. So it's at the end of the day, there's some guys that I think that have found other levels, but I'd like to see a little bit more consistency from some of the guys that are, I expect a little bit more production out of, Tyler Mott is a guy that he creates so much from his speed but the finish hasn't been there. Matthew Joseph before the injury, I really had high hopes for him. If they were healthy and that was, we'll call it Mott, Pinto, Joseph. If Josh was healthy and Stutzle was, however you wanted to do 1-2 there. If Pinto was 3, that was a really nice looking 3, third line. But because of injuries, you've had to adapt. So that's unfortunate.
I guess just to underwhelming players, or like, what players do you think really need to step up their game? And I guess is Debrincat one of those players, although he's played a bit better lately?
Yeah, he's, what I give guys on new organizations. I don't give them the 10 to 20 games. I sometimes go, we might see their best in January, just new situation. And people are like, okay, well, he doesn't have Patrick Kane passing in the puck, but he's still, if you look at his numbers, he's still gotten a lot of looks. It's just been the lack of execution. Now he's at 9. I thought he scored the other night, but it was Brady that tipped it in. Yeah, had 3 assists night. Like he's still got points. It's just there's a 41 goal scorer that's probably on pace for what, 24, 5 type of thing. I think he still hits 25 in his sleep, but we haven't seen the best of him. It's been a slow start, but I still believe like he's what I've liked about him in seeing him live so many times. He's not a big guy, but he hunts for pucks. Like I would expect goal scorers sometimes they play a little softer in hardened areas. He's not. Like he'll go there and he'll battle for loose pucks, which impresses me. It says to me that he's got really good details of his game. So underwhelming would probably be the word, but I only because I think he should be at 15 goals right now because of the looks that he's gotten. But it's coming for him. The other guy for me is Brandstrom. I thought looking at him, and he's a really polarizing guy. There's people that just want him in and want him at the top of the, he's not on the left side. He's always going to be a 3 behind, Shabbat and Sanderson. And that might, that's going to switch year after year because both those guys are really good players. But for me, Brandstrom, he's a guy who gets pretty decent minutes. Let's call it 16 minutes. That fluctuates. I've seen 12 and I've seen 20. So let's say 16. But he doesn't have points. for a guy who advances the puck and is a good skater and really is trying to play the right way, he's gone 102 games without a goal, and he's got 3 assists on the year. I think it's 2 or 3. So that's a guy, when I watched him at the start of the year, I'm like, he's really feeling it. He was holding on to the puck, he was making plays. And when you're doing that by accident, you should be getting second assists by, especially with how offensive the Sens were at the start of the year. So that's the underwhelming part, is the production side of Brandstrom. Not so much like the process, because I think he's been playing some pretty solid hockey and worked on his defensive game. But it's astounding to me when I do my stat sheet every night and I'm like, it's 102 games he hasn't scored, and he hasn't had last game I think he hadn't had an assist in like 21 games, something crazy, which I'm like, this guy is out there a lot for. So that's I guess it's the point side that would be underwhelming for me with Eric.
And I guess before we go, I wanted to ask kind of bigger picture about which Canadian team do you think will go the deepest in the playoffs this year?
Oof. I mean, the Leafs are good. I think Winnipeg's really good. I think Edmonton, like people think Edmonton is a 2-person team. They're not anymore. Like, if you look at their point production, I saw a tweet the other day where it's like, oh, the Leafs core 4. If you actually look at the top 4 players for Edmonton, you've got the 2 freaks, we'll call them, that are like on another planet. And then you've got Hyman, who has the same amount of points as John Tavares. And you've got Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who has the same amount of points as William Nylander. So then my argument is, who's your number 5? Okay, well, 5 on the Leafs would be Bunting. 5 on right now, he would be higher up. He might be the 3 is Evander Kane. So, and Edmonton is getting reinforcements. Their third line is decimated because Warren Fogel's not there. Ryan McLeod's not there. Yamamoto's just coming back off of injury. So they've done the reverse of the Leafs. The Leafs lost a bunch of their D. The Oilers lost, I think, 4 of their top 9 forwards. So I think Edmonton's a better team. And Jack Campbell he's been rotten there. And, he had a decent game the other night I watched. So I think Edmonton, the most disappointing one is Calgary for me, because I think Calgary had the big turnover. And we talked about, new situations for Debrincat. Huberdeau, that's a life-changing, going from Florida to Edmonton, period. That's just a lifestyle change. I'm sorry, Florida to Calgary, not to Edmonton. Florida to Calgary, period. That's a lifestyle change. And then you go, okay, you play a lot more structured in Calgary than you did in Florida. It's freewheeling. Huberdeau has spent his whole career playing with Barkov, basically. Now he's got to establish some chemistry. Kadri settled in, started well early, and then struggled late. So I think Calgary's a better team than they've kind of shown. So I look at I think there's 4 playoff teams in Canada, potentially a 5th if somebody makes a run, whether it's Vancouver, Montreal, Ottawa. But at the end of the day, I think there's 4 that could, and all 4 of those, I could make a case for doing a deep run. Calgary structure, if Markstrom really played like Markstrom. Edmonton, if they did what they did last year, and one of those goalies gave them ample goaltending. I look at Toronto, if they get past their ghosts, then, and really it would be their top players that drag them through, just like McDavid and Draisaitl did last year. And Winnipeg, the goalie is as good as anybody, and the new coach bump, and Winnipeg's been great this season, and they don't, Nikolai Ehlers is one of their best players, and he hasn't been available to them pretty much the whole season. So those are the 4. I don't know who I would choose to come out. Every time I choose somebody, they seem to go in the crapper. So I don't want to jinx anybody, but those are 4 that I think I can make a case easily for all 4 of them to get past the first round and start to move along.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie, for coming on. I really appreciate this and providing all your insight. And thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and we'll stay in touch and we'll do it again.
Great.